নমস্কার।
নমস্কার।
আজকের কথোপকথনে আপনাদের স্বাগত। আজকের অতিথির সাম্প্রতিক বইটি নিয়ে বিভিন্ন কারণেই আলোচনার কেন্দ্রে রয়েছে দীর্ঘদিন ধরে। আমরা আজকের কথোপকথনের শিরোনাম হিসেবেও তার বইয়ের টাইটেলটাকেই ব্যবহার করেছি, ফ্র্যাকচার্ড ফ্রিডম। আমাদের যেটা মনে হয়েছে, স্বাধীনতার ভানটুকুও যেখানে দুমড়ে মুচড়ে যাওয়ার পরেও আমরা অনেকেই সেই ভানেরও যে অবশেষ তাকেই স্বাধীনতা ভাবতে থাকি। ফলে যেটা হয়, মানে এই কোভিড সংক্রান্ত কর্তৃত্ববাদী বয়ান যখন আমাদের অর্জনের চেনা অধিকারগুলোকেও কেড়ে নেয়, তখনও আমরা অনেকেই ভাবতে থাকি এ বুঝি আমাদেরই ভালোর জন্য হচ্ছে। কলকাতায় আগামী জনস্বাস্থ্য সম্মেলনের যে উদ্যোগ চলছে, তার খসড়া কর্মসূচি যেটা তৈরি হয়েছে, তার প্রস্তুতিতে বিশ্বজোড়া যে পুঁজির সংকট 2008 থেকে নতুন করে তীব্র হয়ে উঠেছে, সেই প্রসঙ্গ এসেছে। গত 2 বছরের এই কোভিড কাল সেখানে ঠিক কি কি পরিবর্তন আনতে পারলো তার খোঁজ করা হয়েছে সেই কর্মসূচি তৈরির প্রক্রিয়ায়। graph.org.in এই ওয়েবসাইটে গেলে আপনারা যে কেউ দেখতে পাবেন। এই প্রসঙ্গেই আমরা কথা বলতে চেয়েছি ফ্র্যাকচার্ড ফ্রিডমের লেখক কোবার্ড ঘাদির সঙ্গে। এই বইটির বাংলা অনুবাদ প্রকাশিত হচ্ছে এই বই মেলায়। আমরা কাউন্টার এরা প্রকাশনের কাছে কৃতজ্ঞ মিস্টার ঘাদির সঙ্গে এই কথোপকথনের আয়োজনে সাহায্য করার জন্য। বাকি অনুষ্ঠানটা আমরা সময়ের জন্য এবং সব মিলিয়ে ইংরেজিতেই চালানোর চেষ্টা করব। ওয়েলকাম মিস্টার ঘাদি। On behalf of কথোপকথন that we translate as Commons in Conversation, let us first congratulate you for your upcoming Bangla translation of the book Fractured Freedom. This is probably going to be the 7th translation, right?
Yeah.
So, congratulations.
Thank
we
you.
have borrowed the title for today's discussion.
I see.
How the crisis of capital worldwide relates to the COVID narrative, that a part of common people got convinced that the normalcy, quote unquote, needs to be redefined. And this new normal that denies not only democratic rights, in many cases basic livelihood rights too, are for the sake of common people. We got ready to forego our sense of freedom and are learning to be quite happy with a mimicry of it. So thank you for lending us the title Fractured Freedom to understand the crisis of capital and its relation with COVID narrative. Though we didn't ask your permission, but thank you.
No need for that. It's common property.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So my first question is, how did you think to explore, investigate the authoritarian COVID narrative in the crisis of capital worldwide? Because most of the well-known social scientists took shelter in the pure science laboratory, but for you, it looks like that didn't suffice. So along with understanding the vaccine and genome structure that was so detailed in the article that came out yesterday, you have continuously pursued the crisis not only since 2008, not since 73, but since Second War. Why did you do that? And yes, one pointer for you and for the people who are watching now or will watch later, we don't want to be too factual. You are already too prolific, too elaborate about the facts in your articles. Rather, we are more keen to understand the process of this understanding. If you help us to set the premise of the thought, the facts can come as reference when needed. Mr. Ghadi.
Okay, thank you, Ashish. Of course, the facts are all presented in the article. So I'll just give you the process on which I sort of came to this thinking. I have been writing mostly on economics. I've written on caste and other such things, but mostly I've been writing on economics. Most of my, for example, articles from jail were on the economic situation worldwide and in India. Now, so I'm always in touch with what's going on in the world of economics. And I remember in 2015 or 16, I'd written an article in which I had quoted The Economist, in which they themselves said that the bourgeoisie the international bourgeoisie has virtually utilized all their weapons available to cushion any crisis after the Great Recession of 2008-9. And if anything else comes, then mere quantitative easing and lowering interest rates, which was the method that has been adopted to cushion their crisis, will not be sufficient. And this is something that was said and quoted by me in the Economist in 2015-16. Then I've been observing the economy, and towards the end of 2019, I noticed that the world economies were going into a tailspin. And naturally, when this was happening, well, I was getting ready to write something when suddenly this COVID came onto the scene in 2020. Now, in 2020, what happened was, it was declared in March, and first quarter results came out also and showed the economies of the US, Europe, and Japan in a huge contraction. Up to one was 7%, I think. One was 6%, and one was 4% or something like that. That's unheard of. Even worse than the recession of 2008, 2009, more close to what happened during the Great Depression of 1930s. Now, that really struck me. What I felt was this really odd, that on the one hand, this world has gone into a huge great recession, and on the other hand, suddenly this pandemic is announced and lockdown, unheard of method to deal with it. That first was the point of thinking. But and that too, in my studies, I found that World Health Organization declared a pandemic with just about 4,000 deaths, 4,500 or something deaths worldwide. And so America, Trump also. People say Trump is anti-vaccine and all that type of stuff, but he was the one who declared the lockdown with a few hundred deaths on, I think, March 18th it was. Now, and in India, we declared a most stringent lockdown ever, with ICMR just saying that there were hardly a few hundred or thousand deaths. And the most stringent in the world, the lockdown was, and most ruthless also, that everyone knows. So all this made me think that firstly, how come these two things, were they just coincidences? Or was there something else behind it? But I had no answers. And then another thing that really made me think was that the pandemic was declared, I think, on 11th or 12th March, and the world went down into lockdown by 20th March, 20th or 25th, at least the entire world, starting with America and all this. Now, what struck me that time was that firstly, a lockdown is an unheard of method of dealing with any problem. It's something quite new. And how could just within a week such unanimity, they could get such unanimity to lock down the entire world? That really struck me as being odd. I said there's certainly something more to it. Then already I felt there was there were too many coincidences with the crisis and the pandemic and all those things. And then I started looking into things deeper. Now, earlier, I was also of the opinion, that's what everyone was saying, that the origin, then I first looked for the origin of the virus, zoonotic, it's come from a bat to an animal to a human being. That's what Lancet said, and that's what the world kept saying. So I also said the same thing initially. I didn't write it, but I felt that. I wrote to some people, I think, on the WhatsApp saying that. But I didn't go, I was not convinced totally that it was really that. But there was no other alternative. At least I didn't get access to any media. I believe it was going on, the lab leak theory, but I did not see any of it. But what began unfolding after 2 to 3 months of the lockdown really made me go deeper into the whole thing. The billionaire clubs, first, it started off in March with the stock exchange crashing. At that time, I really thought also that the stock exchange crash, plus all this crisis, that the contraction of the economies, forget the pandemic part of it, was a sort of 1930s scenario which could lead to a world war. And now I know world war is not an option because the two major contenders, US and China, have such overlapping economic interests and capital so involved. So they can't go to war. Something else would be needed. If at all that 30s situation was there. So something else would need to be done. That much I could understand. But then after that, I began to think that how come these billionaires have made wealth on an unprecedented scale when the economies of Britain and America and all their countries are contracting by 20-25% in that quarter? Unheard of contraction, yet their wealth has gone up as never before. Then I really felt that there's something fishy to the whole thing. And same thing was playing out in India. The wealth of Ambani's, the Sensex, the 4,000 company Sensex also made the highest profits ever in that quarter. Some 171% growth over the 2019, the same quarter in 2019. And that's the previous year. So what was playing out internationally was playing out here. So I started going into further there. But what I could not understand at that time was why would the bourgeoisie or the billionaire club want to destroy their own economies? I just could not understand that. And to get out of their crisis. That point, really, I just could not understand what it was all about. Yes, true, they made a lot of money, this, that, all that stuff. But I could not understand the dynamics of how it would benefit them at all. In fact, it seemed contradictory that they lock down, they're destroying their own industry, they're destroying their supply chain, they're destroying everything, they're destroying their market, they're destroying everything. How would that benefit them? True, their wealth has gone up through the stock market, rise in stock market prices through the quantitative easing, the trillions of dollars pumped into the economy and the financial sector by the American, European, Japanese governments. But how in a long term could that? So then I started studying more the economy, the world economy first, and then of course in India. What I found was 2-3 things. One, which I'm surprised none of these economists, left economists mentioned, whether it's Jayati Ghosh, our Indian people, or C.P. Chandrasekhar and all these Vijay Prasads and all, or whether it is Banthri Review and all these others, these left, Michael Roberts and all. I keep reading these leftist economists because I basically study economy. Something I discovered, which I've not seen mentioned anywhere, whether it's in the bourgeois economists or the leftist economists, was an enormous centralization of capital. This factor somehow didn't seem to be there. Then I saw the factor that BlackRock, these asset management groups, then I went back, I never heard of them also. What is the asset management group? I didn't know. Then while studying only, I came to know what they were. I saw they were nothing. They existed from 2000 or even 90s. But their real growth started after the 2008-9 Great Recession, their size. And then what I found, what was astounding, was that just 3 asset management groups, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State City, virtually control the S&P 500 companies. 40% S&P 500 companies control. They have a controlling shareholding in all those companies, in those companies. And virtually it's the same people who are controlling whether it's Pepsi or Coca-Cola, the competitors. But it's the same financiers that are controlling them. So also the digital moguls, so also the media, so also the pharma companies. Yeah, same people. They are all the same people basically there controlling the whole thing. That is by these asset and these 3 companies have till I last saw it 11 trillion worth assets in management. 11 trillion. That's nearly 4 times India's GDP. So just these 3 companies. That means it's not that their CEO controls it. It's the people who invest. All these digital moguls, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, the financiers, the Soros, the whoever else it is. It's these people who have the controlling interest in farmers, media, digital, everything, it's they who control everything. So that one aspect of enormous centralization of control and capital, I noticed, which I didn't see anywhere else mentioned. Then I was wondering whether I'm getting it all wrong, because this was new to me. I had to check and cross-check on Google, going and seeing the amount of shares that Coca-Cola has and Google Alphabet has and things like that. Who owns it? Each company-wise, I cross-checked, because I said, then how come no one's mentioning this?
Right. How come no one is mentioning?
And so I cross-checked everything and I saw, yes, it's true. Everywhere I managed to see the individual companies. Yes. First come BlackRock, then Vanguard, then Straight City, then maybe Goldman Sachs and some other of these asset management groups. They were the ones, the one or two more really big ones. Goldman Sachs is actually small. We think that they're very big. They, of course, politically, they're highly influential, because I think Trump had 4 of their ex-employees on his ministry, Goldman Sachs. But in size, they're small compared to these 3. So, and what is also surprising is that BlackRock and State City are on the quoted on the stock exchange. You know their shareholding. Vanguard is a big shareholder and all, but Vanguard is kept secret. It's a privately held company. So it's they who actually control the strings. I still haven't investigated, been able to find out who the main people are in Vanguard. Maybe if search more, we could find out. But that will disclose much of actually what's going, or who's controlling the string. So one important aspect in my study was this. I found the enormous centralization of capital. I checked and cross-checked, and it's seeing the factual. So they are the ones. So who are these people? They're the digital moguls. They're there in everything. They're the financiers, Rothschild, Rockefeller. Bill Gates is anyway in one of the digital moguls. And it's all these people, basically, this, what I call the cabal, C-A-B-A-L, cabal, the real mafia who control the world. So they are dictating the agenda. Now that's one aspect. We'll come to what the left say afterwards, or don't say. In fact, not one mentioned this anywhere. I've still not found it at all.
Even I have that question for you involved.
What is that?
I have that question for you involved.
Achha, I see. But I've still not seen it. My Corona Capitalism article, which I wrote some time back, came out still then. There's silence on it. Okay, attack it at least if it's not factual. But no, there's nothing. There's not a word on it. Okay, so that's one aspect I found. Second aspect is on studying the question, this crisis. I realized crisis is there. Everyone could see it. It was there in the first quarter. After lockdown, naturally it went into bigger contraction. So a huge crisis. So now how did they get over it? Then I began thinking, and I came, what is a crisis? Means there's lack of profit and lack of market. Lack of profit, investment, and there's lack of market. So now, how were these two solved by the lockdown? That's what the point was. So then I started going into it more depth and seeing that actually the lockdown or a war or whatever, it was called a war incidentally in the first phase. They were calling it equivalent to a war, and our frontline workers are like our soldiers and things like
warriors.
that. Warriors and all that. It was called that. But actually what happens is that we have to see it that if the interests of these people, this cabal that controls the world capital and the world everything, the whole system, how does it affect them? Because they are dictating the terms. It's they who are calling for the lockdown. It's they who are operating through the WHO or Bill Gates or Fauci and all this these gangsters. So the whole question is that how does it benefit them? Then I found out, calculated, let's see, and India's playing out even before. One important aspect of increasing productivity and therefore profits and investments, they're anyway getting a lot from the trillions of dollars pumped in by the governments. So that they're getting in the name of a crisis. But the profits, the by increasing productivity is by through excessive digitalization. The digitalization process has been going on anyway, particularly in India. First, we had the Notbandi, then we had GST, and the Indian government is continuously trying to digitalize every aspect of the economy. And payments, DBT, this, that, welfare, everything is being digitalized. This lockdown pushed the whole world to increase digitalization. And digitalization is, and therefore it'll come with that, will come artificial intelligence, and then robotics and things like that will develop. And basically, it'll be a increasing high level of productivity will be there, and they'll probably restore the profits. In the process, then millions and lakhs and crores are thrown out of jobs. Industries are destroyed, small scale sectors are destroyed. All that is of no concern to them. Their profits is their motive. Profits are restored. But by destroying all this, they destroy their markets also. But they want markets. If they can't sell their goods, then how they can't survive? So how is this solved in the lockdown? Here are two methods. One is that by smashing the small and middle MSMEs, what we call MSMEs, they grab their, if necessary, they grab the assets and the companies at a very low rate because they push through bankruptcy. Second, even if they don't capture that, they wipe them out and capture their markets. So all the MSMEs will be thrown out and the markets will be captured. So you see, we are in a situation, there's no question of extending the market. There is China and US are conflicting for markets, but that's another factor that's playing out. It's got a huge market and the West cannot compete with that. So they have to grab existing markets. There's no new market too.
It is either distributing or redistributing.
Yeah. So this is one aspect. By smashing the small scale, they are grabbing the markets also. Maybe the assets also, but if not the assets, if they're just closed down. The best example of this can be, you can see is Amazon. By forcing you to digitally go, your mom and shop, neighborhood shop is closed down because they don't have a selling because everyone's going to Amazon or they are weakened. The aim is to close them down. So that is an example. So on a wide scale, this has happened in the lockdown. If you see the data in India, at least, worldwide, it'll be the same thing. Large sections have been destroyed, weakened, or pushed to the wall. The MSMEs. That is one aspect. Now, the second aspect, you'll say that unemployment. If everything is digitalized, everything is this artificial intelligence and robotics, and we have great philosophers now also, like Klaus Schwab is the hatchet man, but we have philosophers like Harari also, who talk about the useless people. I mean, he talks about the useless and useful people. Okay, let's see the useless people, which Harari says is useless people. There will be. I mean, if you want to call them useless, that's his term. And which Klaus Schwab calls as, you will own nothing, but you will be happy. That's his agenda. But you will be happy by the 2030. That's the agenda. So you own nothing. That's the same. You'll be one of those useless peoples. And what the COVID virus does, firstly, to whatever extent, whether they were successful or not, is to reduce the number of these useless people by killing them. Where your immunity, see, masking, in my last article, I showed how masking is harmful for your immunity, how the vaccines also doesn't help the immunity, how all the steps taken in the lockdown actually work against your immunity and therefore make you prone not only to COVID, but to all other diseases also. So all the steps taken were basically pushing you into a medical crisis that they were doing. So in that way, they'll wipe out a large number of people. The old, particularly, they kept saying COVID will affect the old because they wanted to wipe out the old also. They're unproductive and they use, at least in the West, they use a whole lot of pension funds and a whole lot of money like that. Get rid of them. So they're a burden on society. And also the poor, the useless, what Harari says, the useless people. So it's an ideal concoction. So in that way, and what they are proposing, that Klaus Schwab has said, is that you will own nothing, but you will be happy, means that you will be dependent on the government for a dole, all the useless people. He calls it universal basic income. This universal basic income, they're already experimenting with it in US, in pockets. And in India also, they are moving a lot in that direction, giving these doles to people who just to keep them alive. So all this whole crores of people, mass, will not be employable because everything is digitalized except the IT people. So you'll have a middle class of useful people and a mass of useless people. All of them will be on the UBI, Universal Basic Income, means a dole. Basically, they will only be able to purchase food and medicines. Maybe some cloth and clothes and all that. Even already in America, there are reports coming in on I saw in a video that BlackRock is buying over all housing mortgages, the people, houses, middle classes houses. So if you're from your own house, if you become a tenant of BlackRock, you already become dependent on them. And that process has gone on in a big way already in the US. And here we, so if we find that, so what they also want is that market of basic food and medicine that the poor will buy, the useless. Call them what Harari says, the useless people will buy. That's also a huge amount. That's also a big market. So you will have the useless market of basic food and medicine, basically for the useless, and consumer products for the useful, basically the middle class, you say. That middle class anyway is taken over by them in their marketing techniques, Amazon and all these people. They also wanted to grain this food and this thing. That's why the farm laws, that is why telemedicine, that is why all these things are were trying to be brought in a big way. In fact, Bill Gates type of person is heavily involved, not just in vaccine production and vaccine, he shares in vaccine, but he's also in land. He's also wants to get into in food products, everything. In fact, some of the laws that were made, farm laws that were made, were for his benefit. Some NGOs brought it out, which I've quoted in my last article. So the whole question was that in this way, they might create horrible conditions for the people, but they will sustain their markets, they will revive their profits, and they will try and cushion their crisis. This is the answer that the cabal have. Whether they're successful or not, only future will tell. But if the left and Democrats don't oppose all this, they'll be successful. But that is the agenda which I saw, which I try to put in my Corona Capitalism article, basically.
Right.
And basically, that's the main point. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I was planning to ask you if these are the beneficiaries and these are the benefits of this whole COVID narrative, who are paying the cost, or which part of the society bore the cost.
Yeah.
But you actually answered that as well. I'm not going to ask you again.
Yeah.
But if you want to add something, you can add, please.
No, I think I've covered most of the points that is there, but I'd really think that if COVID stops, they will find something else. Because this is the economic agenda, and unless there's a severe opposition, they will find some climate change. Another point I want to. No, I'll come to that when I deal with the left, because they talk a lot about climate change. So another big issue is climate change. They say, oh, look how nice lockdown is, just unpolluted air. That type of thing people are saying.
Is very favorable to the environment.
Yeah, so it helps climate change. So anyway.
Then I'm coming to the left question. But before that, as this is the first time I am talking to you, my understanding was as a social scientist, you were inclined towards left. Now, are there people calling you as conspiracy theorist? You wrote about the conspiracy theory probably in last June, 2021 June probably. So, are you now being called as conspiracy theorist now?
Yes, yes, very often. See, the whole question is that in India particularly, I don't know about the worldwide, but worldwide this phenomenon is that this anyone on this COVID agenda at least, that anyone who disagrees with the main agenda of the cabal, which they say is science, and if you talk against it, you're a conspiracy theorist. That's the general thing. It started off with that right in the very first Lancet article, which was actually drafted by Fauci and his lot, but he got 80 scientists to sign it, where he said the coronavirus is zoonotic and comes from an animal without any evidence whatsoever. Till now, they haven't got the evidence. And those who are opposing it, obviously there were people opposing it, the zoonotic theory in the West. I didn't hear about it, but he said they're all conspiracy theorists. I mean, right from the beginning, they've used that word. These Gates and all these people who are actually pushing the agenda. So they've been calling, and that's anywhere you go, if you raise any question on this masks, on vaccines, on lockdown, on social distancing, anything, without questioning, you'll see people saying you're a conspiracy theorist. That is why in this last article, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I had to spend so much time researching science and medical things to write the last article, which came out yesterday in Mainstream. The reason was because I had to put it on record that this is also science, that point, so that people will say, and I also dealt with the aspect of the propaganda machinery in this last article. Not only the WHO, how they use that Hill and Coulton PR company to promote their agenda. It's a very notorious company which has really promoted all the asbestos, tobacco, everything that is harmful for people, or even wars, Iraq and this thing, or dictators. This Papa Doc and this, all this, it's all been done by this company. This company was hired by WHO to promote the agenda. So obviously they took up all these points of conspiracy and this and that in their promotion, and they knew how to do it because they have researched it well. I particularly in that article, and again I'm repeating that again, what was really striking to me was that right in the 50s and 60s, this company used science to oppose science for the tobacco conglomerates. When it began to be shown that tobacco is linked to cancer, they hired this company which paid doctors and scientists and all to say that it is not linked. And they put forward their own science to show that. They've done that with asbestos, they've done that with opioids, they've done that with this thing. So many times they've done that. So this business of we are science and you are conspiracy theorists is all rubbish. I mean, because if you look at history, particularly post-World War II in this period, we can give you 20, 30 examples how science was falsely put to promote harmful things, including pesticides and other things that have cause for cancer besides tobacco. So these PR companies are expert in that. Also, what they've developed since 2010 is this so-called behavioral science, behavioral technology, in which they attack your subconscious, and it's called nudge units. They've set up in the UK by the government, and they set up 400 units all over the world. And surprise of surprises, but another thing I noticed by chance again, the Niti Aayog set it up in June 2020, not on a small scale. on a massive scale in India. That means right from the start of the COVID, we have had some sort of Niti Aayog. If you see, just go to the website and you'll find it, nudging and all that. And one important aspect of the promotion is masking. We must convince people that masks are necessary in the Niti Aayog website. The two aspects they say we must promote, one was on their website, the second is masking, promotion of masking. Such importance they give to masking. Vaccine, of course, was made compulsory by governments. They didn't need Niti Aayog for that. So this was done, and they themselves are saying we have employed 92,000 NGOs to promote this. Can you imagine? So no wonder poor left and center and this thing are all taken in properly. I don't know how they are operating. One has to really go into how they are operating. So that's another aspect. So this conspiracy theories, actually the conspiracy lies elsewhere. The left should understand that. And in fact, what they are promoting is the conspiracy, because as my article has shown, last article, all masks, vaccines, everything are not only ineffective, but they are harmful. Lockdown is being shown to be ineffective. So that being the only agenda is surely a conspiracy. But anyway, leave that point alone. It's their propaganda. And their propaganda has to be countered by real science, real study of economy, real factual things of what the situation is at the ground level. And that's what I try to present. So I have partly gone into all this for two reasons. One is that these leftists should realize that it's not just conspiracy, it's a real, just because some writers are taking up the agenda, we'll come to that later, but it doesn't mean that they might be, it's very convenient. Huh?
No, let me cut in, please. Actually, I wanted to ask this question at this point. Why in this whole narrative left have been left out? What bothered them? What did they think?
See, that's what I try to then study afterwards, is that what struck me is that these writers are taking up the agenda. Not all writers. I mean, it was Trump who started the whole thing. It's portrayed, yeah, it's true. Republican states are not wearing masks and not pushing the vaccine. There, and it's in Europe also, some writers are opposing vaccine, and I wouldn't call it left. The media tends to call Democrats left. They are not left. There's not much to choose between a Clinton and a Republican. This thing, whether Trump or anyone else, Clinton is. I mean, it's the deep state acting. Now, they sometimes had the Republicans. They had that. In France, for example, I don't see much difference between a Le Pen and the neo-Nazis, and Macron, an upstart from nowhere. He came and became the president, and later I found he's a Rothschild man. Rothschild is one of the scamblers. Yeah. So who's left and who's right and who's center? Things have to be really analyzed again. That's one aspect. Second aspect, even you see, one thing we have to understand is that when the system is in crisis, the ruling class also comes into loggerheads with each other. They split. For example, I've been trying to ask people why I've never seen the Democrats and Republicans so deeply split down the middle in America. We also always say the deep state decides who should come to power, either the Republicans or the Democrats. And it's the deep state, the military industrial complex, which decides the issue. But now that seems to be divided in America, quite sharply divided also. Why? One has to go into it. Some people say it's the military behind Trump and the other industrial complex and digital complex all behind the Democrats. I don't know. We have to study that more deeply. Also, which is another astounding fact, is that the so-called neo-Nazis are supporting closer to Russia, which is supposed to be linked to China, which is the opposing lobby. While the Democrats and the others, social democrats, are hostile to more aggressive against Russia, even in Ukraine or other such places. So it's very complex just now, and I'm not going at that because I don't understand it really, because one has to really study it more deeply. What I do find is that the left somehow has been totally, I can't understand it. I mean, I read Monthly Review. I read Rob Wallace's interview, front page interview and Frontline. He's also a Monthly Review person. I read Michael Roberts. I read some others. What's his name? I can never pronounce him. Zizek. Slavoj Zizek. Slavoj Zizek. He's a philosopher, Marxist philosopher, and so many others. So the question is that not one of them, especially Monthly Review and their economics. I mean, they have that great history of Paul Barron, Sweezy, such people who are brilliant economists who have really started it. But I read Bellamy Foster's articles on COVID and things like that. All of them saying it is zoonotic, it is ecological. Then I found that Monthly Review and Rob Wallace and such people have written books on the ecology, climate change. Now we come to climate change. Now, the Democrats, Klaus Schwab, all making a big issue of climate change. And it's not that it is not an issue, but the way they're promoting it, it's their corporate solution to climate change. Greenhouse gases, you have to put that new batteries, which involves actually, God knows how much greenhouse gases they cause, the lithium and all to produce. Is very difficult technology. And anyway, you produce all those things and you remove greenhouse gases and do electric cars and things like that. All that's that. But that's all corporate solution to, at the same time, it's the same people. You look at in India, who are the ones who are doing green energy? It's Adani and Ambani. They're the two main green energy. So it's all corporatized. So climate change is there. The solution to climate change is not all this technology and all this new technology and all that type of stuff. It is afforestation, it is land, soil, water conservation, so many things. They've destroyed everything. At least in India, we see it playing out. I don't know about the rest of the world, but in India, we see they have destroyed our water, our land, our forests, our air, everything. Even our groundwater has been destroyed. India, a land of rivers. I have no groundwater now left, let alone surface water. It's turned into gutters. So the whole question is that they so emphasize climate change that they don't see the entire picture. What actually is, this is the important key point, what actually is a systemic crisis of capitalism is seen by them as an ecological crisis only. But ecological crisis is only one aspect of the systemic crisis of capitalism. And they see that as the whole. And if you see all these articles, it only deals with the ecological aspect. And that is, the starting point is wrong because basically there's no proof that it's zoonotic, it's a virus. What they say about COVID-19, they say all these viruses are pathogens. They've all come because of destruction of ecology and the bringing of the pathogens closer to the animals we consume and the human being by destruction of ecology. Now that may be true in a general form. It might have been true for all the other viruses. It was, in fact, because there was proof. They got the evidence of MERS, SARS, all these of intermediary animals, and they were able to pinpoint the intermediate animal in those cases, but not here. Till now, they've not found the intermediate animal. So, but they just take it for granted. They don't even think that, and they don't mention this lab leak thing. Biological warfare research is also an aspect of capitalism. It should not be there. I mean, a socialist system will not indulge in biological warfare research. We won't use that weapon to fight any enemy that is there. So this also is an aspect of capitalism. So why don't they see that? So the question is that all these left, that is, first the economists, if you say, this Michael Roberts, he has a blog. He's a profuse, he writes profusely on the capitalist system. But he writes on every aspect of it, like debt, surplus, inflation, but not the central aspect of how the capital system is being run today, the centralization of capital. Now, you see, the question is that if you're a Marxist, we analyze with the viewpoint for finding out methods in the system. We don't do it for any abstract intellectual purpose. The idea is that if we know the reality, the concrete analysis of concrete conditions is the starting point of Marxism, as they say. Now, if we are not able to and get what is the concrete reality, how will we devise tactics? How will we take the steps to bring about change in the future? The steps we have to take today depends on the situation. It's not some abstract thing that we go on like the monk tolling the bell, making a union here, making a this thing there, making a activity there, making this thing. We're so stuck in our own routines that we are satisfied with that, even if it gets nowhere. Even after 20 years, if we are still marking time in the same place, we are happy with what we have done. But the point is not just to do, the point is to be effective, to work for change. And the starting point of that is to understand what is happening and where, and not only what is happening. As a Marxist, we should be able to see the trend, where it is heading. So only if you know where it is heading, can you in advance devise the necessary tactics to face the situation. And if you are not doing that, you are like a handicapped person. And all of us have become, it seems, really handicapped, because in my assessment, if I'm wrong, let them write. Now, I put it in writing what I've said, but let them write. I'd be very happy to correct myself. But
anything particular about Indian left? You are mostly talking about left globally.
Yeah,
Anything
globally.
about
The
Indian
trouble
left?
is with India, I've hunted high and low. The most of the Indian leftists don't seem to say anything. They quietly acquiesce in the whole thing. They quietly accept everything and go about the COVID agenda like the cabal, but they're not theoretically taking it up. I'm hoping that the Indian left now come out and attack me on these, what I've written. But because at least provoke them to say something. In the West, they're saying something, whatever, which I've said here. I mean, I was horrified reading Michael Roberts, the Slovak. It's difficult to call them Marxist even. They're quoting Bill Gates' organization, they're quoting WHO. Can you imagine? They're in the West. But so I was quite astounded when I studied their works, what they're saying. But in India, they just don't. And there's, in the West also, there are 80 organizations that have signed a statement. There's a European forum that has signed statements. They're all in the same way. The communist organization, there are some 80 Communist and Workers' Party signed a statement. Nothing on as an alternative. And in India, they basically continue in the same vein. There are some like some from Bengal. There's that virologist and Saroj Giri and all who have come on a video thing saying that origin is zoonotic, and because it came through a pangolin. Now that even those who are saying it's zoonotic have never said a pangolin. I don't know where he got that from. But so, I mean, it's very superficial. And then another video, dialectics of something called dialectics of biology or something like that. It's just pure science. It's no social content in that. Saroj Giri and that Partho Ray or some virologist, who, by the way, is working for WHO also. He says so openly. So anyway, but besides that, there's Jayati Ghosh. She writes in the same vein as most of these international economists, say nothing really on the base. So there's nothing concrete out here, but everyone is implementing, except at the international level, there is, as was brought out, the Philippines party, who have taken a separate stand to some extent, and in India, the farmers movement. These two, whether you call them leftists or whatever it is, are something that have some difference in the I hope this is a starting point, at least for the rest of the left, to think that Philippines party, that's the CPP, and in India, the farmers movement have taken positions. Farmers movement may not have said anything, but their practice seems to have shown it. I've not read anything where they've said it, but their practice certainly, they didn't fall. Leftists would have gone and put masks and covered up, and Section 144 would have been there, and then they wouldn't have taken part. There would have been no farmers movement if they had fallen in line with the COVID agenda, basically. And they just cocked a snook at that. And I don't know if they've written anything, but they did that. CPP has, I believe, written something. But otherwise, the left is totally bankrupt, and it's really sad. I say this with a heavy heart because it's a very serious agenda that is taking place by these people. This is necessary both at the national and international level to oppose it. And India is a huge player on this agenda. India, I think, is a major focus. And Bill Gates has his finger in every single pie, including our health minister has been granted a position on his Gavi central board now, while he's central minister. And the PHFI and these and the bureaucrats and the big people like Infosys people, they're all heavily involved with these foundations, whether it's Rockefeller or Bill Gates, more particularly Bill Gates in India. And all these people have their links there, they have their money. This PHFI president, Srinath Reddy, he has a 1 crore salary, and whatever other perks he has, God alone knows where he goes and where his money comes from in tax havens or whatever. And so with all the whole lot list of people I've outlined in this last article, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. There are many more. And we talk about India being in the control of these foreign people and foreign capital and all that. But how in actual fact it is being played out with individuals involved is perfect. We can perfectly see that in this lockdown and pandemic agenda here in India. And one point more is that in the last monsoon session of Parliament, where the opposition kept shouting about Pegasus, but they passed bills with such speed, all linked to what Naomi Klein calls disaster capitalism. You create a disaster. She wrote this in 2008. MR Monthly Review, Bellamy Foster talks about, and now we enter the decade of catastrophic capitalism. This was said by Naomi Klein in 2008, where disaster capitalism. She explained it well, because you saw it play out in India exactly what she said in 2008. So all this is there, but the left must think. The left cannot just say the rightist is taking this agenda, so we must take the opposite agenda. Well, that's we have concrete analysis of concrete conditions. Let whoever do whatever they want. And yes, we must see what the rightists are doing. But that is, we have no distinct illusion that the rightists will take anything forward. They're doing it for some of their own contradictions. There's some of the internal, because of the crisis, they're deeply divided. A lot of contradictions. China is a big player. The China-US contradiction is there. All these have to be studied to understand what is taking place at the in depth at the international level. Then we'll get an understanding of why a section of the ruling classes in the West may be opposing this agenda. Whether they're really opposing or whether they want to diffuse the opposition into a fascist thing, that could also be there. They're very smart. It can be to diffuse the opposition. In case it goes to the radical left or the left or something, better we take it up. And otherwise, because it's why people are coming out on the streets in a huge, large numbers in France, in Germany, in US, in Canada, everywhere. They're opposed to the vaccine mandate, opposed to the lack of democracy rights. Whoever leads them, leads them. Now the rights lead them because where's the left? The Social Democrats played a major role in just the same way in bringing Hitler to power in Germany. They're being silent. Just see the role of the Social Democrats before. Are we doing the same thing today? Handing over the movement in a platter to the fascists? It's we who should be worried. We have seen that history. Is it repeating itself now? By handing over the masses to the right wing and the fascists? Who's to blame? They or we? Because we are not leading them. The masses will go whoever is willing to lead them. Anyway, that's
Mr. Gadi, I asked for 1 hour. It is almost over.
oh, sorry.
So my last question,
Yes.
and this should be the ending question, I think. What's next? What are the possibilities? On whom would you rely most?
We cannot. We have to rely on the people. And if the left is not coming forward, then we have to make a stronger democratic alternative. Unless there's a democratic alternative on this agenda, as on all other agendas that are developing before us, anyone will take it over and lead it. In India, it may be the RSS. In the West, it may be some neo-fascists. In other words, everything. I mean, in India, you take the Bhakti movement, the progressive Bhakti movement that is there, has been Hindutvaized because the Marxists don't take it forward. The leftists don't take it forward. So unless the Democrats take the democratic traditions and the new democratic needs forward and are there in the leadership to take it forward, it will be used by any reactionary or this thing or any upstart who comes on the scene, who wants to make gain power, utilize the masses to their benefit. Masses will go with them because they're taking up. I mean, the masses are discontent with what is going on, and they will go with anyone who's there. The leftists should be there. The Democrats should be there. The progressives should be there in the forefront of these movements, but they're not. Fault is whose? The fault is theirs, but the future is certainly not with those people. The future lies in creating a democratic alternative. Whatever it is, it may take time. It will take time with seeing the state of the left and progressives today. It will take time, but hopefully they will realize, or at least new forces will come forward and they will see what is the writing on the wall. And if not today, tomorrow, things will be really bad. And they will have to then rethink the whole thing, their agenda. The things are really going to get bad. And India will be a central place.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gadi.
Thank you.
We hope to talk to you again sometime next week on your book, particularly on the eve of translation of the book that is going to be published in this book fair, Kolkata Book Fair 2022. So hopefully next Saturday we will be talking to you again.
Okay, that's lovely.
Okay.
Nice. Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for asking me, and I hope to reach out to more people through these type of sessions. So let's hope so.
Let's hope so.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
আপনারা যারা দেখছেন তাদেরকেও ধন্যবাদ এতক্ষণ সময় দেওয়ার জন্য। আগামী শনিবার 26 তারিখ আমরা আবার মিস্টার গাদির সঙ্গে কথোপকথনে আসব। ওনার বই ফ্র্যাকচার্ড ফ্রিডমের যে বাংলা অনুবাদ সেটা এই বইমেলায় বেরোচ্ছে, সেটা নিয়ে কথা বলার জন্য, এই বইটার অভিজ্ঞতা, অনুবাদের অভিজ্ঞতা, এগুলো নিয়ে কথা বলার জন্য। আজকের মতো কথোপকথন এখানেই শেষ করছি। নমস্কার, ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you.